Welcome, beautiful people, friends, and listeners. I'm Antonio. Today, my heart is a little heavier, but in these moments, it's even more important that we pause, reflect, and stand with one another. First, I want to take a moment to send all my love and strength to a fellow voice in this space, Klaire Kane. Klaire has been one of the anchors of truth, clarity, and fierce compassion in this podcasting YouTube world. I've listened to her religiously. Now, she needs us. Klaire has shared that she is facing serious health challenges, and the road ahead includes medical expenses that no one should have to bear alone. I invite you to listen to her brave and honest episode. I will leave the link in the description, and if you can, please contribute. Even a small gift can make a big difference. Again, the link to support Klaire will be in the description. We show up for one another. That's what community means. I also want to extend our deepest condolences to the families affected by the tragic crash of Air India flight AI 728. Among those lost was a Toronto dentist, one of our own. The flight, meant to bridge homes and hearts, ended in unimaginable sorrow. Only one soul survived. May the families of the 241 lives lost find comfort in memory and in the love that surrounds them in these difficult days. And lastly, we cannot turn away from what's happening in the U.S. The current U.S. administration has crossed moral lines once again. The reports of ICE raids in churches and schools, sacred spaces of refuge, are chilling. They are grabbing U.S.-born citizens, people with no criminal records, targeting hard-working people, and those that are eventually found and released are bearing testament to the cruelty and evil of these people. These actions are not only inhumane, they are illegal, and history will remember. My prayer today is for the families living in fear, for the children separated from parents, and for the hearts of our leaders to be stirred awake. We must remain vigilant, and we must remain kind. So if you have anything to give, whether it's a donation, a prayer, a share, or simply time to listen to someone in need, let this be your call. Let love be the loudest thing we say today, and let your light shine bright. Thank you. Let's begin. So, why was King Charles giving a speech in Canada? Do we swear an oath to the sovereign, queen, or king? And what exactly does King of Canada even mean? This is all real constitutional, ceremonial, symbolic, and a little confusing. Last month, King Charles III arrived in Ottawa to open Parliament. He delivered what's known as the Speech from the Throne, centuries-old tradition inherited from the British Crown. But if you're wondering why, or even how this is still a thing in 2025, you're not alone. To make sense of it all, we have to go back, not just to Queen Elizabeth, or even to Confederation, but way before that, before treaties, before colonization, before the red coats, the tricorn hats, and the powdered wigs. We begin with the first peoples of this land, their laws, their nations, their systems of governance, long before a royal seal ever landed on a Canadian scroll. This is the story of how Canada came to be, why the monarchy still plays a role, and what King Charles' visit tells us about where we go next. Because the crown isn't just worn, it's woven into history, into land, into legacy. Let's begin. Before Canada was ever a concept, before it was stitched onto flags or stamped on passports, this land already had nations. Indigenous peoples, from coast to coast to coast, governed vast territories with wisdom and complexity. The Haudenosaunee Confederacy practiced diplomacy and collective law. The Cree, the Dene, the Mi'kmaq, the Anishinaabe, the Coast Salish, each held intricate systems of governance, language, trade, and land stewardship. These weren't scattered tribes, these were sovereign nations. And they didn't just survive the land, they understood it. They negotiated alliances, resolved conflicts, and protected sacred knowledge, passed down through generations. So when the first Europeans arrived, first the French, then the British, they didn't discover an empty frontier. They entered a world already in motion. The earliest treaties weren't land grabs, they were understandings, trade pacts, military alliances, sometimes cautious, sometimes hopeful. But as empire building grew, so did conflict. By the time the Seven Years' War ended in 1763, Britain had taken control of vast French colonies in North America, including what would become Canada. The Treaty of Paris handed over land like it was merchandise, but the people living on it were never truly consulted. Not then, not often since. Still, indigenous nations continued to resist erasure. They held their ceremonies, languages, and laws through violence, displacement, and forced assimilation. And to this day, many still assert sovereignty and title to their lands. It's important to understand, Canada didn't begin in 1867. It began with nations that still exist today. So, before we talk about kings and crowns, let's remember who was here first and who never left. After the Treaty of Paris in 1763, Britain had a new northern jewel, a vast, rugged, multilingual territory full of forests, rivers, and resistance. They called it British North America. What followed was a slow, often reluctant march toward the idea of Canada, a patchwork of colonies, clinging to the mother country for defense and trade, but slowly growing into something new. And in 1867 it happened. The British North America Act, signed in London, birthed the Dominion of Canada. It was called a Confederation, but it was still a colony British to its bones, its queen printed on every coin, its governor-general the crown's hand in every matter of state. At the time, the monarchy wasn't just symbolic. It was authority, permission, presence. But as Canada grew, so did its desire for independence. By 1931, with the Statute of Westminster, Canada won legislative autonomy. No longer would Britain pass laws for Canada. No longer a child of the empire but a sibling. Still, the Queen remained head of state. And then came the year 1982. Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau led the charge to patriate the Constitution to bring it home. No more needing London's approval to amend our laws. This was the birth of the Constitution Act, and with it the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, arguably one of Canada's most defining documents. But not everyone felt invited to the table. Quebec refused to sign the 1982 agreement, sparking decades of separatist sentiment. Twice, in 1980 and again in 1995, Quebec came this close to leaving Canada. And always, in the background, the crown remained, unchanging, unmoved, ceremonial perhaps, but not invisible. The monarchy didn't just survive these shifts, it adapted. And through it all, it stayed perched on the Canadian Constitution like a royal watermark. Now, Canada was writing its own laws, defending its own rights, but with a monarch still at the top of the parchment. It's easy to talk about crowns and constitutions like they're abstract clean lines on paper signed in ink, but behind the polished ceremonies are stories that stain the very pages of our history. For many Indigenous peoples, the crown isn't just symbolic. It's a signature, stamped on treaties that were broken, etched into laws that stripped away children, land, and language. From the Indian Act to the creation of residential schools, the Crown's authority wasn't just decorative, it was devastating. Thousands of Indigenous children were taken from their families and forced into institutions where abuse was rampant, language was forbidden, and identity was erased. Though the Government of Canada administered the system, it did so under the authority of the Crown. And for many survivors, the silence from the monarchy over the decades has echoed louder than any apology. Then there's the question of land. Today, nearly 89% of Canada's land is what's called Crown land. But ask Indigenous communities and they'll tell you it's not the Crown's to claim. Across the country, legal battles, blockades, and peaceful protests have tried to reassert ancestral rights. And meanwhile, a growing number of Canadians are asking, why do we still have a monarch? According to a 2024 Angus Reid poll, only 28% of Canadians support remaining a constitutional monarchy. Among younger Canadians, that number is even lower. And yet, the monarchy remains, not because it's beloved, but because it's embedded. Still, there are gestures, moments. During his 2022 visit, then Prince Charles said, "It has been deeply moving to meet survivors of residential schools, to listen and learn. I want to acknowledge their pain and honor their resilience." Words, yes, but for many, words are no longer enough. Canada's past is not past. And if the Crown wishes to remain, it must reckon with what that Crown meant to those it overlooked. So here we are, spring 2025. King Charles III lands in Ottawa to do what monarchs do best, open Parliament. He's greeted by pageantry-mounted police escorts, military bands, and that curious blend of British formality and Canadian politeness. But what exactly is this royal routine? Well, it's called the Speech from the Throne, written by the Prime Minister's office, delivered by the Governor General, or when the stars align the King himself. It's not his agenda, it's Canada's calm, but it's delivered through his voice, a living reminder that we are still a constitutional monarchy. This year, King Charles's speech touched on national unity, Indigenous reconciliation, climate change, and Canada's role in global peacekeeping. He spoke with measured dignity, but also a tone of continuity. It was less a call to action, more a call to remember. The response? Mixed, as usual. Some praised the symbolism. Others rolled their eyes. A 2025 Ipsos poll found that while 49% of Canadians still respect the monarchy as a historic institution, only 23% feel it's relevant to their daily lives. Still, there's something surreal about seeing a monarch delivering Canada's government plans like a living wax figure with constitutional authority. And for younger Canadians, it's a tradition that's more confusing than compelling. Yes, he is our king. Yes, he does read speeches. No, he does not do our taxes. Yet for all the mixed emotions, King Charles's presence still matters, not because of power, but because of what it reflects. A nation still tethered to its past, still deciding how much of that past it wants to carry forward.
Is the king having so many prime ministers, and perhaps one of the most visible examples of that was when the royal succession was made gender neutral back in 2011 with the Perth Agreement, which came into force in 2015. The prime ministers all had to agree.
Okay, and here is all the dignitaries and a spontaneous God Save the King, I think. Or perhaps not, but I don't know where it's coming from, so I think it's spontaneous. Ashley, you're down there. I don't know if they're just going by you right now.
Along with a procession that included the Prime Minister, the Chief of the Defense Staff, all head inside to a room, the Senate, that's going to be packed full of dignitaries. There are several former Prime Ministers, we're told, that are inside, several former Governor Generals, as well as a series of premiers, all here to witness this historic moment. There's a new king, a new government. This is a chance for the Prime Minister to try and assert Canada's sovereignty and send a message not only to the U.S., but to the world that this is a sovereign country. And so we're going to be watching closely to see if any of those references are in this speech.
Okay, thanks, Ashley. Let's just listen in now to what's happening inside the Red Chamber here.
Pray be seated. Veuillez vous asseoir.
Margaret Trudeau was there, Neil Mulrooney, as you mentioned, Kim Campbell.
Yep.
You also saw the former Speaker of the Senate, George Fury, and his wife Karen were there, and you saw Jeff Regan, former Speaker of the House of Commons, and his wife Kelly Regan, who I believe was Deputy Premier in Nova Scotia. I know she was in the cabinet in Nova Scotia. I worked with her on the Nova Scotia election special last fall. So you see people, you know, who have held parliamentary office. George Fury, he aged out.
Now they're trying to corral him to make sure that he doesn't shake the hands of every single person on the chamber floor, as much as they might all like that. You can see the Queen. She is on the other side doing some of that handshaking as well. on the left of your screen, that of course is West Block, where we are waiting for the usher to arrive shortly, and inside the House of Commons, or outside the doors of the House of Commons. These are the new thrones I was talking about. Carolyn, I don't know if you know about them. I do if you don't, but they were built for this new temporary building.
Yes, and Queen Elizabeth II herself chose the trees from the Windsor Great Park that would be used to make these particular thrones. And they are made for this building as these much older thrones that were designed for Queen Victoria's son-in-law, Lord Lorne, when he became Governor General in 1878 and traveled to Canada with Queen Victoria's daughter, Princess Louise. Those much older thrones were in need of refurbishment, along with the Senate chamber more widely. So these are the new thrones that are in place for this ceremony.
They include the cipher of Queen Elizabeth II, who, as you said, chose them, reigned while the throne was carved, and they will stay there to represent the era that the thrones were created. And of course, only the King, the Governor General, and the Queen may sit on these thrones when the Senate is in session. Extraordinary moment here. Wouldn't you like to hear what this conversation is between the Prime Minister, who has decided to go up to the King and Queen and speak to them personally? He had a short audience with the King yesterday. Of course, we don't know the details of what was said, but now here they are again, talking a little bit more about who knows what. The Prime Minister knows King Charles, has met him in various roles and capacities in the past, whether the Governor of the Bank of England or other. Interestingly, his brother, Sean Carney, is the Chief Operating Officer for Kensington Palace, essentially runs that palace. So he's got all sorts of interesting connections to the royal family.
It's interesting, though, Rosie, to go back to what the Finance Minister, François-Philippe Champagne, said to Ashley, because we'll soon, presumably...
May it please your Majesty, the House of Commons has elected me their Speaker, though I am but little able to fulfill the important duties thus assigned to me. If in the performance of those duties I should at any time fall into error, I pray that the fault may be imputed to me and not...
and Indigenous roots, and become a bold, ambitious, innovative country that is bilingual, truly multicultural, and committed to reconciliation. The Crown has for so long been a symbol of unity for Canada. It also represents stability and continuity from the past to the present. As it should, it stands proudly as a symbol of Canada today in all her richness and dynamism. When my dear late mother, Queen Elizabeth II, opened a new Canadian Parliament in 1957, the Second World War remained a fresh, painful memory. The Cold War was intensifying. Freedom and democracy were under threat. Canada was emerging as a growing economic power and a force for peace in the world. In the decades since, history has been punctuated by epoch-making events. The Vietnam War, the fall of the Berlin Wall, and the start of the War on Terror will be maintained. The government will balance its operating budget over the next 3 years by cutting waste, capping the public service, ending duplication, and deploying technology to improve public sector productivity. Will match the challenges of our times and the ambitions of Canadians. Honourable Senators, members of the House of Commons, when my dear late mother addressed your predecessors 7 decades ago, she said that in that age and against the backdrop of international affairs, no nation could live unto itself. It is a source of great pride that in the following decades, Canada has continued to set an example to the world in her conduct and values as a force for good. À vous et à l'ensemble du peuple
To
canadien,
you and to all the people of Canada, my wife and I wish to extend our sincere thanks for this, the warmest of welcomes.
As the anthem reminds us, the true North is indeed strong and free. Members of the House of Commons, you will be asked to appropriate the funds to carry out the services and expenditures authorised by Parliament. May you honour the profound trust bestowed upon you by Canadians. And may God bless and guide you in all your duties.
So, what does it all mean? Why does Canada still have a king? Well, because in our system, the crown is the foundation of the Constitution. It represents continuity, stability. Even when the throne changes hands, the institution remains like the bedrock beneath the building. The monarch's role today is almost entirely symbolic, ceremonial, restrained, and politically neutral. Decisions are made by elected officials. The king signs off. That's the form, but the feeling, that's a different story. To many, the crown is a relic. To others, a reminder. And to some, especially those whose ancestors were displaced state, it's a symbol of pain not yet healed. Still, symbols evolve. And in today's Canada, perhaps the deeper question is not, do we need a king? But what kind of country do we want to be? Do we want to cling to what was or shape what's to come? Because while the king may wear the crown, it's the people who hold the power to change what it means. This isn't just about one visit or one man. It's about a nation asking itself what identity means. When your history is borrowed, your future uncertain, and your present full of possibility, whether you're for it, against it, or just quietly confused by it, this moment matters. Not because the crown rules us, but because it reflects us, our contradictions, our convictions, our crossroads. The story of Canada isn't finished, and neither is the conversation. So as the cameras turn off and the king flies home, we're left with the question only we can answer. What do we do with the crown now that we see ourselves in it? Once again, thank you for being here. Every time you watch, comment, or share, it means more than you know. I pour my heart into this work because I believe in it. And clearly, if you're here, something brought you too, and it's not my pretty face. If you haven't subscribed yet, this is your moment. Click that button. It's free, and it makes a real difference. And hit the notification bell so you will be one of the first people to be notified when something new and meaningful goes up. If you feel moved by what we're building, consider going a step further. There's a Buy Me a Coffee link and a membership option if you'd like to help us keep this going strong. It's like lighting a little candle for something you believe in. And whether you're here quietly or loud and proud, leave a comment if you can. It helps the message travel. Thank you so very much. I appreciate you. Thank you. You know, I have to say, the visit was something. Ottawa showed up, not just the government, the people. Yes, it's our capital city, so monarchists and royalists will always make their way to Parliament Hill. But this time, it wasn't just about the monarchy. People came, whether they supported the crown or not. Some who've questioned the relevance of the monarchy still stood on sidewalks, waved flags, and sang. Why? Because this was bigger. This was about being Canadian, about our identity, about showing up with dignity and respect to say, we are different, and we like it that way. As King Charles entered the Senate chamber, our Red Room, spontaneous voices rose up from the crowd. God save the King. And then more joined in singing it. Unrehearsed, unscripted, and deeply human. And I think part of that warmth came from something personal. This is a man in his 70s. His first visit to Canada as sovereign, diagnosed with cancer. And still, he came. Canadians are empathetic people. We respond to dignity and vulnerability. We saw a king. Yes, but we also saw a man. A man who looked deep in thought at times and emotional. Random people shouting, God save the king, on the streets. That one would turn into 2, then 3 by the time the 4th was ready. God save the king was being sang out loud. And I truly believe Canada got to him. There was a moment during the anthem, he looked up, eyes searching the sky, and I thought, he feels this. This isn't just another state function. This mattered. He later said, every time I come to Canada, a little bit more of Canada seeps into my bloodstream and gets to my heart. And you felt that when he hugged Margaret Trudeau, whom he's known for decades, when he lingered in the Red Chamber, speaking with senators, former prime ministers, governors general, he wasn't just performing monarchy, he was participating in it. But let's be honest, there was something else at play here. This wasn't just about the king. It was also about Donald Trump and the quiet but growing concern that his vision for the U.S., one that disregards democracy, international norms, and yes, our sovereignty, might one day come knocking north of the border. This visit was a soft but resounding message. Canada is not for sale and will not the 51st state. We are our own country with our own system and yes, our own king. And while that may raise some eyebrows, especially among Republicans and reformers, for many Canadians, this moment wasn't about bowing. It was about belonging, about choosing difference. We don't want to be America. We like our system. We like who we are. And this visitous gathering of voices, this standing ovation, was the sound of a country saying just that. King Charles knew it too. He ended his speech from the throne with a phrase that echoed through the chamber and into the hearts of those listening. The true North is indeed strong and free. And the applause? It was thunderous. I was surprised how they were greeting people, casually chatting with those gathered nearby, something I honestly didn't expect. And yet, as I watched, it struck me. Canada holds a particular place in the heart of the monarchy. Queen Elizabeth II, late Queen, visited Canada more than any other country in the Commonwealth. On one of those visits, she once said, "I am home now." She meant it. That sense of connection wasn't performative, it was deeply personal. That bond has continued, I believe, with King Charles. Over the years, he's visited Canada more than 20 times. But if we were to speak plainly, between the two royal sons, it was Harry who built the deepest connection, especially once Meghan came into his life. Remember, Meghan spent years in Toronto filming Suits. She lived here 6 or 7 years, I believe. To many of us, she felt Canadian. And this is where Harry came to see her. This was their quiet meeting ground, their retreat, their beginning. So yes, Canada has always been special to them, and in moments like this, to us. What I didn't expect was how moved I would be watching this visit. I've seen throne speeches before. I've seen the formality, the red carpet, the walk through the Senate chamber. But this time, it felt different. I wasn't looking at King Charles the man, not the father who took away Harry and Meghan's security, not the grandfather entangled in family drama. I wasn't seeing the human being with all the flaws in history. I was seeing the symbol of our head of state, the constitutional anchor of our democracy, the living link to the system of checks and balances that defines how we govern ourselves as Canadians. And I think many of us saw that. People who normally wouldn't line up for a royal visit showed up. People who aren't monarchists stood in crowds. Because suddenly, this wasn't about monarchy. This was about sovereignty. We've felt insulted, deeply insulted, by the way Donald Trump has spoken about Canada, calling our Prime Minister a governor, mocking our sovereignty, claiming he could take us just like that. It wasn't just political, it was disrespectful to our history, to our independence, to our shared sacrifices in wars and in peacekeeping, to the pride we feel not in being like America but in being something else entirely. And so yes, I think Canadians showed up not for the man, but for the message. We are a sovereign nation. We have a system. We have a king. And we are not for sale. For that moment, it didn't matter where you stand on the monarchy. It was about Canada. And maybe, in this complicated, uncertain world, we just needed to feel part of something together. Someone beside me said, "I don't know why I feel this way. It's strange." And we talked about it because, yes, it is strange to feel stirred by something we've seen many times before. But maybe that's what symbols are meant to do. Not to dominate us, but to remind us who we are and what we will defend together. No, please don't get me wrong. We know that the man is a coward and could have been a transformational king, but he will be remembered for his inability to bring his own family together, to stand up for the first black biracial family member, his daughter-in-law, to protect his son and his young family, but instead, he created one of the most unsafe environments for them by removing their security. He showed himself to be incapable to care about anyone or anything that does not involve Camilla and her family. But for a day and a half, I allowed myself to put all of that and more to the side and just think of Canada. As the head of state, the head of our government, he came and did what was asked of him. So, thank you, you bitter, bitter man. Thank you. In Canada, government works a bit like a partnership, but one where both sides occasionally bicker over who gets to hold the pen. There are two main levels of government: federal and provincial or territorial, depending on where you live. Each has its own powers, responsibilities, and jurisdictions, kind of like roommates sharing the same house, but with separate bedrooms and different chores. Federal government, think Ottawa, the Parliament, the Prime Minister, and the King, yes, still symbolically. The federal government handles all the big picture stuff that affects the entire country. They take care of national defense, military, foreign affairs, immigration and citizenship, criminal law, currency and banking, interprovincial and international trade, Indigenous affairs, though shared with provinces in practice. They also run Canada Post, issue passports, and oversee national parks. And yes, they're the ones who collect federal taxes. Provincial and territorial governments. Each province and territory has its own government with a premier instead of a prime minister. They run things that touch your daily life most directly. They're responsible for education, healthcare, transportation, like highways, natural resources, property and civil rights, local policing and municipalities. That's why you might get free healthcare in Ontario, but different rules in Alberta or Nova Scotia. Same country, different rules, it's all provincial jurisdiction. Each province has its own legislative assembly and its own version of the Crown represented by a lieutenant governor instead of the federal governor general. RH. Who's in charge? Well, both, but only within their own spheres. Canada's system is based on federalist meaning. The Constitution divides powers between levels of government. Sometimes they cooperate, sometimes they clash, and sometimes things fall through the cracks. Just ask any mayor. But ultimately, both levels answer to the people. And the crown? Still there, still symbolic, still signs the laws at both levels. Center block cone of the country's most recognized buildings is the crown jewel of Ottawa's Parliament and a fundamental symbol of Canada. Designed in the Gothic Revival style by John Pearson, it's an architectural masterpiece, a combination of immense size and painstaking artistry and craftsmanship. It's reminiscent of Westminster and yet uniquely Canadian. Walking through the hallways of Center Block is like walking through history. Each room tells a story about the Canada that was, the Canada that is, and the Canada whose history is yet to be written. Home to both houses of Parliament, this building is often referred to as an icon of democracy. Within these walls, generations have shaped the Canada we know today through determination, defiance, debate, and discussion. Through moments of crisis and celebration, Canada's Parliament has stood as a symbol of resolve. Today, it stands under restoration, a massive project to preserve its legacy. The Senate chamber is where senators have debated national issues for nearly a century. It is a space not only for deliberation, but for state ceremonies, including the opening of Parliament and the speech from the throne events filled with pageantry and ancient traditions. Center Block has been closed since 2019 for a much-needed upgrade. It's a decade-long project with a projected completion in 2031 and an estimated cost between $4.5 and $5 billion. Over 450 workers are currently on site daily, with more expected as the project intensifies. From engineering to masonry, construction to heritage restoration, this is Canada's most complex heritage rehabilitation project ever undertaken. Jennifer Garrett, Director General of the project since 2016, is leading this monumental effort. The building, though beautiful to the eye, suffered significant deterioration. Leaks from the roof and aging infrastructure risk parliamentary operations. Without intervention, the heart of Canadian democracy was in jeopardy. The to-do list is vast. Heating and ventilation systems date back to the early 20th century. Sculptures are crumbling, stones are cracked, concrete supports are deteriorating, steel is rusting. The last major renovation happened after the fire of 1916, and since then, only minor fixes were possible during recesses and summers. That's why a deliberate plan was enacted to move MPs and senators to alternate buildings West Block and the Senate of Canada building so that Center Block could be emptied for full-scale restoration. Just weeks after Parliament moved out, a major leak occurred, confirming how close they had come to disaster. But the building held on long enough to be safely closed for renewal. The restoration is now in full swing. The project is divided into 3 phases: deconstruction, rebuilding, and finishing. The first phase, demolition and removal of hazardous materials, was completed in December 2023. Now begins structural upgrades and mechanical installation, followed by the return of heritage elements and finishes. It takes a village, a broad range of experts, from architects to masons to conservators, working in harmony. Some elements are still being designed while construction begins a strategy to ensure Parliament gets its home back as soon as possible. Canada's first Parliament met here on the 6th of November, 1867. Back then, Ottawa was not the most sophisticated capital. Queen Victoria's choice of Ottawa surprised many. Lord and Lady Monk were unimpressed by its rustic charm. Yet construction began, and the neo-Gothic design of Thomas Fuller and Chilian Jones stood proud on Parliament Hill. That building stood for 50 years until the fire of the 3rd of February, 1916, destroyed it, leaving only the library intact. Architects John Pearson and Joseph Omer Marchand, who had never worked together before, were brought in to reimagine the structure for a new century. Their goal was to reflect the growth of Canada since Confederation and build a space that would serve future generations. They preserved the neo-Gothic exterior, but created a distinctly modern interiora Beaux-Arts layout focused on purpose and meaning. Everything had a reason, from the hierarchy of spaces to the choice of materials. Canadian and North American stone and wood were used to represent the country's geography and diversity. Pearce's design reminds parliamentarians where they are, what they represent, and their duty to Canadians. Every element is part of a narrative, who we are, what we value, and how we govern. A prominent metaphor throughout the building is the ship of state. From the marble compass rose in Confederation Hall to the nautical motifs in the Prime Minister's office, the theme of steering through stormy seas with steady governance recurs. An integral part of the restoration is preserving over 20,000 heritage assets murals, stained glass, wood carvings, and sculptures. Some items were removed for safekeeping. Others remain in place, protected by rigorous monitoring. Kate Westbury, the project's heritage lead, oversees the balance between modernization and conservation. Some materials, like stained glass and murals, could be removed carefully. Others, like plaster ceilings and frescoes, required delicate on-site preservation. In the Senate chamber, 170,000 sheets of gold leaf shine from the ceiling. It's been preserved in place to prevent damage. Massive chandeliers weighing over 3,400 pounds were carefully removed with engineered pulley systems. These are considered among the most beautiful light fixtures in Canada and will be modified only slightly to meet modern lighting standards. Okay, beautiful people, this is it. I truly hope you got something out of today's podcast. And if you're still confused, leave me a message in the comments section, and I will find the answer. Before we go, I really want you to take care of yourself and your loved ones. Darkness is being bold and causing a lot of pain and suffering. So I need you to breathe, to inhale and exhale. Turn off the news and social media. Go for a walk if you can. Watch anything that will make you laugh, pray, and don't allow the darkness to take over. Stay positive. Do things that will fill your soul. Let your light shine bright, brighter than ever. Darkness will not win. It will not, but the light needs each and every one of us. I love you all very much. Oh, and I almost have the musical completed. Maybe I'll stream it tomorrow. Okay. Love you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. you.